When I walked into Horizon Digital Solutions as their new chief executive officer, I never expected to see my ex-husband's face turn pale with shock. The same man who had ended our 8-year marriage by announcing he was leaving me for his assistant during my birthday dinner now stood frozen by the conference room windows, realizing that the company's mysterious new leader was the woman he had so callously discarded. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The security guard handed me my temporary visitor badge with a friendly nod, but the contract in my leather portfolio clearly stated Chief Executive Officer. The glass and steel headquarters of Horizon Digital Solutions stood proudly against Boston's autumn skyline, morning sunlight catching on its windows, like flames. I adjusted my charcoal gray suit and took a deep breath, savoring the weight of the moment. After 4 months of confidential negotiations with the board, today was the day I would step into my role as CEO, and the day Jason would discover exactly who he'd be answering to. "Good morning, ma'am. Your name, please?" The receptionist at the main desk smiled professionally. "Rebecca Morgan," I replied, the name still feeling somewhat strange. I'd reverted to my maiden name after the divorce was finalized, shedding the Reynolds name along with the shattered remnants of my marriage. "Ah, yes, you're expected upstairs." She handed me a visitor badge. "This temporary ID will get you through all the doors today. HR will provide your permanent credentials after the announcement." I clipped the badge to my lapel, suppressing a smile at the irony. "Visitor," it read, though soon I would be leading one of Boston's fastest-growing digital marketing firms, the very same company where Jason had built his career while I had supported him from behind the scenes. The elevator ascended smoothly to the 21st floor, my heart beating steadily with anticipation rather than nervousness. 2 years ago, I had been nothing more than Jason's wife to the people in this building. Then I became Jason's ex after he publicly humiliated me at Harborview Restaurant, raising his glass for a toast at my birthday celebration, only to announce that he was leaving me for Vanessa, his executive assistant who was sitting 3 chairs away at the same table. "I've found something real," he'd said, oblivious to the collective gasp around us. "I think we all deserve happiness, and Vanessa and I have decided to stop hiding our feelings." 8 years of marriage ended over a plate of untouched birthday cake, witnessed by 6 of our closest friends and half the restaurant's patrons. Today, I would be their leader. The elevator doors slid open to reveal the bustling executive floor. Through the glass partitions, I could see various department heads gathering for the morning meeting. Most wouldn't recognize me. Jason had always kept me separate from his work life, claiming that mixing business and personal matters was unprofessional. How convenient that philosophy had been for him while he was sleeping with his assistant. I walked confidently toward Yam, the reception desk outside the main conference room. The young man looked up with a professional smile. "Good morning. How may I help you?" "I'm Rebecca Morgan. I believe I'm expected." Recognition flickered in his eyes, though he maintained his composure. "Of course, Ms. Morgan. The board members are already inside. The announcement meeting will begin in approximately 30 minutes. "Thank you," I replied, checking my watch. 8:55 a.m. The official announcement of my appointment was scheduled for 9:30 a.m. sharp. "Is there somewhere I can wait until then?" "Of course. I can show you to our visitor lounge." As he stood to escort me, the conference room door opened and several executives filed out. Jason emerged last, his attention fixed on the tablet in his hands. He looked different than when I'd last seen him. A new haircut, slightly thinner, with designer glasses I didn't recognize. Success had changed him, or perhaps it was living with Vanessa. I lowered my head slightly, turning toward the reception desk as if checking my phone. Not yet. The moment wasn't right. "Kyle," Jason called to the receptionist. Send these market projections to the department heads and make sure everyone's ready for the big announcement at 9:30. Ed's being very mysterious about this new CEO. My pulse quickened. He had no idea. Right away, Mr. Reynolds, Kyle responded, returning to his desk as Jason headed toward his office, Vanessa falling into step beside him, their matching navy suits a coordinated statement I found both calculated and tacky. Kyle turned to me apologetically. I'm sorry about the delay, Ms. Morgan. Let me show you to the waiting area. Actually, I said, an idea forming, is that small meeting room still available? The one near the east corridor? I gestured toward what I knew from the building plans was a glass-walled conference room with a clear view of Jason's office. Kyle looked surprised. You're familiar with our layout? I smiled. I did my research. He led me to the small room where I settled in with a perfect sightline to Jason's desk through the glass walls. Perfect. I opened my portfolio and removed a sleek leather folder containing the documents that would reshape Horizon Digital Solutions forever, including evidence of the mismanagement I'd spent the last 20 months meticulously documenting. The files told a damning story. Systematically poached clients from partner agencies, misappropriated creative concepts from rejected job applicants, and toxic leadership practices that had resulted in 42% staff turnover in key departments, all of it bearing Jason's signature or approval. The board had been stunned when I presented my findings during our confidential meetings, leading directly to their unanimous decision to bring me in to clean house. While Jason had been busy building his new life with Vanessa, I had been strategically rebuilding mine, earning my MBA, and establishing a reputation for turning around struggling marketing agencies. What Jason didn't know, what he had never bothered to discover, was that I had been the strategic mind behind his early successes, ghostwriting the proposals and campaigns that had launched his career. My phone vibrated with a text from Ed Fitzgerald, the board chairman. Everything set for 9:30. The summit is prepared. Are you ready? I smiled, remembering Ed's expression when I'd first presented my evidence. The shock had quickly given way to calculated determination. Horizon's reputation would take a hit when the irregularities eventually came to light, but with proper management and transparency, they could weather the storm. They needed someone with intimate knowledge of the situation but untainted by the scandal, someone with marketing expertise and a personal commitment to setting things right. They needed me. I texted back, ready and positioned. Through the glass, I watched Jason moving about his office, commanding attention on a video call, gesturing emphatically as Vanessa took notes beside him. Same expensive watch, same authoritative stance, same dismissive wave when a junior staff member tried to interrupt with what was likely important information. The next 25 minutes passed with excruciating slowness. Executives and managers began filtering into the main conference room, the summit, as they called it, on the top floor. I noticed several board members arriving, their expressions carefully neutral as they passed my temporary space. Some nodded subtly in my direction, a silent acknowledgement of what was to come. At 9:25 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Ed, we're ready for you. The summit, 22nd floor. I gathered my materials, took a deep breath, and straightened my suit jacket. The moment 2 years in the making had arrived. As I approached the conference room, I could see Jason through the glass walls, sitting confidently near the head of the table, one seat removed from the central position, the CEO's chair. Vanessa sat beside him, their heads bent together over a shared document, the diamond on her left hand catching the light. The ring that had once been promised as an anniversary gift to me now adorned the finger of the woman he'd left me for. Ed met me at the door, his expression professional, but his eyes revealing satisfaction at what was about to unfold. Ms. Morgan, welcome to Horizon Digital Solutions. The room fell silent as heads turned toward me. Jason continued reviewing documents with Vanessa for a moment before registering the change in atmosphere. He looked up, his sentence trailing off mid-word as our eyes met for the first time in nearly 2 years. Confusion clouded his features first, recognition without comprehension. What was his ex-wife doing here? Then the pieces began to connect. As he noticed my position beside Ed, the board chairman's hand respectfully at my elbow, the deferential posture of other board members. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ed began, his voice carrying the authority of his position, "before we make the formal announcement to the company, I wanted to personally introduce you to Horizon Digital Solutions' new Chief Executive Officer, Rebecca Morgan." Jason's face drained of color, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the edge of the table. Beside him, Vanessa's expression transformed from confusion to dawning horror. The visitor badge suddenly felt feather-light against my lapel. "Many of you may not know Ms. Morgan," Ed continued, "but she brings exceptional qualifications to this position, with her background in strategic marketing. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Her recent MBA with honors from Wharton and her impressive track record turning around Apex Creative and Blueprint Media. The board voted unanimously to bring her leadership to our company during this critical transition period. I stepped forward, placing my portfolio on the table as all eyes followed my movements. My voice, when I spoke, was steady and clear, the voice of someone who had transformed pain into purpose. "Thank you, Chairman Fitzgerald. I look forward to working with all of you as we address the significant challenges facing Horizon and chart a course toward authentic creativity, ethical business practices, and sustainable growth." My gaze settled on Jason, who looked as though he might be sick. Vanessa had shifted away from him slightly, already creating distance. Some of you might be wondering about my familiarity with Horizon's operations despite coming from outside the company. The subtle emphasis on outside wasn't lost on Jason, whose breathing had become visibly uneven. "For those who don't know, I continued, opening my portfolio to reveal the meticulously organized documentation, "I was once Rebecca Reynolds, and I believe it's time we discuss the actual state of our agency, starting with these irregularities in client acquisition and creative attribution." As I began distributing copies of the analysis, Jason's shock transformed into something darker, a cornered, desperate realization. In a single morning, he had lost not just his authority, but his carefully constructed facade. And the woman he had discarded over birthday cake now held the power to expose everything. The temperature in the room seemed to drop as understanding dawned on the faces around the table. This wasn't just a leadership change, it was a reckoning, and it had only just begun. The conference room had fallen so silent you could hear the gentle hum of the ventilation system. I remained standing at the head of the table, watching as executives flipped through the pages of evidence I'd provided. Their expressions shifted from confusion to disbelief to dawning horror as they absorbed the implications. Jason sat frozen, his complexion ashen against his navy suit. The man who had once commanded every room he entered now seemed to be shrinking before my eyes. Beside him, Vanessa stared at the documents, her manicured finger tracking down a list of client names, clients she had helped acquire through tactics that now lay exposed. These numbers can't be accurate. Diana Torres from legal finally broke the silence, her voice strained. This would suggest systematic misrepresentation to clients for at least 2 years. 3 years, I corrected, maintaining my composure. The pattern begins subtly in 2020 but becomes increasingly bold by 2021. Note the discrepancy between reported campaign results and actual performance metrics. Nearly 40% inflation, consistently across major accounts. Ed nodded grimly. The board has verified Ms. Morgan's findings through an independent audit. The evidence is irrefutable. Jason's breathing had become shallow. visible in the rapid rise and fall of his chest. His eyes darted around the room, assessing allies, finding none. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a forced casualness that fooled no one. There's clearly some misunderstanding. These campaign reports were all approved through proper channels for strategic client management. I met his gaze steadily. Are you referring to Project Mirage, the one that systematically inflated social media engagement numbers to justify higher retainer fees? The same project where junior staff who questioned the numbers were either silenced or let go. A muscle twitched in his jaw. The Project Mirage documents were particularly damning. I'd discovered them only through careful interviews with former employees who had left Horizon under suspicious circumstances. I think we should continue this discussion privately, Jason said, attempting to regain control. This is a complex matter with sensitive implications for the company. That's precisely why we're discussing it here, Ed interjected firmly. Horizon has operated in shadows for too long. The board has unanimously decided that transparency begins now, in this room, with these executives. I nodded my thanks to Ed before continuing. Yes, the agency is in a precarious position. Yes, there will be legal and financial consequences. But with proper leadership and complete transparency, Horizon can weather this storm and emerge stronger. And you believe you're that leadership? Jason's voice dripped with sudden venom, his shock giving way to anger. A woman who's never run anything more complicated than our household budget? Several executives shifted uncomfortably at his naked hostility. Vanessa inched her chair slightly away from his, her self-preservation instincts visibly kicking in. I allowed myself a small smile before responding. While you were building your career at Horizon, Jason, I wasn't just running our household budget. I was completing my MBA. I was consulting with agencies on ethical marketing practices. And for the past 2 years, I've been turning around companies that faced far worse situations than Horizon's current predicament. I paused, letting this sink in. Throughout our marriage, Jason had dismissed my career aspirations, insisted that his work was enough for both of us. He'd never bothered to notice when I'd shifted from supporting his dreams to quietly building my own. Her most recent client being Apex Creative, Diana said suddenly, recognition dawning on her face. You're the consultant who uncovered their billing scheme and rebuilt their client trust. Their stock has doubled since they reorganized under your guidance. Jason's face contorted with disbelief. This is absurd. You can't possibly. The board didn't choose Ms. Morgan despite her connection to you, Jason, Ed cut in. We chose her because she has the unique combination of skills and intimate knowledge of Horizon that we need right now. The fact that you were once married is irrelevant to her qualifications. But we all knew that wasn't entirely true. My personal history with Jason had given me insights no outside consultant could have acquired, access to conversations, patterns, and details that had ultimately led me to unravel his professional deception. Now, I continued, returning to the matter at hand, let's discuss immediate action items. First, we need to prepare for controlled disclosure to affected clients. Second, we need to secure all campaign data to prevent any unfortunate deletions. My eyes flicked meaningfully to Jason. And third, we need to restructure the executive team, effective immediately. Jason stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the polished floor. This is a witch hunt. You have no right. I have every right, I replied calmly. As of 8. Agam. This morning, I am the Chief Executive Officer of Horizon Digital Solutions, appointed by unanimous board decision. Your position as Chief Marketing Officer now reports directly to me. The stunned silence that followed was broken only by the soft ping of an incoming email on multiple devices around the table. The official company-wide announcement of my appointment, precisely timed to arrive at 9:45 a.m. Jason's phone remained conspicuously silent. I'd instructed IT to delay his notification by 15 minutes, A small, perhaps petty victory, but satisfying nonetheless. "This meeting will continue in 30 minutes, I announced, gathering my materials. "I suggest you all take some time to review the documentation thoroughly. Jason, I'll need to see you in my office immediately." "Your office?" he repeated, voice hollow. "Yes," I replied, gesturing toward the large corner office with sweeping city views. "Your office, or rather until approximately 10 minutes ago." As executives filed out, murmuring urgently among themselves, Jason remained rooted in place, his world visibly crumbling around him. Vanessa hesitated, clearly torn between staying with him and distancing herself from what was clearly a sinking ship. "You should join the others, Ms. Clark," I said to her, my voice neutral. "Your position will be discussed separately." When only Ed remained with us in the conference room, Jason's composure finally shattered. "You manipulative!" he hissed, leaning across the table. "You engineered this whole thing for revenge." Ed stepped forward, but I raised my hand slightly, stopping his intervention. This moment had been 2 years in the making, and I wouldn't be robbed of it. "Revenge?" I repeated softly. "Is that what you think this is about?" I gathered my portfolio and stood to my full height, looking directly into the eyes of the man who had once been my everything, the man who had ended 8 years of marriage with a public announcement at my birthday dinner. "This isn't revenge. Jason, this is justice, for the clients you've misled, for the employees whose ideas you've stolen, for the company you were entrusted to represent ethically." I paused, letting my words sink in. That it happens to bring you to your knees is merely poetic. As I walked out of the conference room toward what was now my office, I heard Ed's voice behind me, cool and professional. "Mr. Reynolds, HR will escort you to your new office on the 18th floor. Please don't attempt to access any company servers or remove any documents from the premises." The visitor badge felt impossibly light against my lapel as I stepped into my new domain. Through the glass walls, I could see the office floor buzzing with the news of my appointment. Employees gathering in clusters, smartphones displaying my company headshot from the announcement email. The corner office, Jason's inner sanctum for the past 5 years, was already being transformed. His golf trophies and marketing awards had been boxed, the pretentious leather furniture was being replaced with my preferred modern pieces, and the closed blinds had been opened to flood the space with natural light. Symbolic, perhaps, but necessary. A new era of transparency was beginning at Horizon Digital Solutions, and the corner office was just the first space to feel its effects. I settled into the chair behind the expansive desk, now my desk. The office offered panoramic views of Boston's skyline, a visual reminder of how far I'd climbed since that devastating birthday dinner. I allowed myself exactly 30 seconds to savor the moment, the culmination of 2 years of meticulous planning, countless sleepless nights, and single-minded determination born in the ashes of humiliation. My phone buzzed with a message from Melissa Chen, the head of creative and the only executive who had secretly assisted me during my investigation. Systems access transferred. Jason locked out of all upper-tier platforms. Security protocols enacted. Also, congratulations. About damn time someone exposed him. I smiled briefly before returning to business mode. The next few hours would be critical in establishing my authority and preventing Jason from covering his tracks, or worse, sabotaging the company out of spite. Kyle, now my executive assistant, appeared at the door. "Ms. Morgan, IT has set up your credentials, and I've rescheduled your calendar for the day." He hesitated, then added with quiet satisfaction, "Mr. Reynolds is being escorted to his new office on the 18th floor. He's not taking it well." "Thank you, Kyle." I gestured for him to close the door. "I understand you've worked with Jason for 3 years?" "Yes, ma'am." His expression remained carefully neutral. "Then you've likely seen or heard things that might be relevant to our current situation." I met his gaze directly. I need to know if there's anything I should be aware of immediately, particularly regarding Project Mirage or any client concerns that might escalate quickly. Kyle's professional facade cracked slightly. I've suspected something wasn't right. For years, the private calls, the separate reporting structures, the meetings that disappeared from the calendar afterward. He straightened his shoulders. I keep copies of everything, Ms. Morgan, including items Mr. Reynolds thought were deleted. I hadn't expected this, an ally in Jason's inner circle. That could be extremely valuable. Kyle, would you be willing to share that information with our audit team? Absolutely, his response came without hesitation. Some of us have been waiting for this day for a long time. The implications of his words settled over me. Jason's deception had created silent victims throughout the company, people who'd seen wrongdoing but felt powerless to act. That would end today. Set up a meeting with Melissa from Creative and the independent auditors for 2 p.m., I instructed. And Kyle, thank you for your integrity. After he left, I turned to my computer, logging in with my new credentials. Access to the company's innermost workings now lay at my fingertips. I had done it, transformed the humiliation of that birthday dinner into the sweet triumph of this morning. But as I began reviewing Jason's email history, I realized this was about more than personal vindication. This was about building something better from the ruins of what Jason had corrupted. And that work was just beginning. The commotion outside caught my attention as I reviewed the quarterly marketing reports. Through the glass walls of my new office, I could see Jason arguing with 2 security personnel near the elevator bank. His face was flushed with anger, his gestures increasingly erratic as several employees stopped to watch the spectacle. Smartphones, discreetly raised to capture what would undoubtedly become viral content within the company's internal messaging system. I pressed the intercom. Kyle, what's happening? Mr. Reynolds is refusing to go to his new office. He's demanding access to his old computer and files. I watched for another moment as Jason's tirade continued. This public meltdown was exactly what I'd wanted to avoid, not for his sake, but for the company's. We needed a controlled transition, not a spectacle that would end up on social media within minutes. Ask Ed and Diana to join me immediately, I instructed Kyle. Then have security bring Jason to the Elmwood conference room, not here, within 5 minutes. By the time Ed and Diana arrived, both looking concerned about the developing situation, I had already drafted a strategic response to Jason's outburst. Jason is spiraling, Diana said without preamble. He's threatening to call major clients and tell them to pull their contracts. He's already tried contacting Martin Lawrence. At Prisma Innovations, Ed added. Fortunately, Martin called me first. He was confused by Jason's claims that the company is being hijacked. I nodded, processing this information. Martin Lawrence was Horizon's largest client, representing nearly 25% of annual revenue. What did you tell him? The truth, that we're undergoing a leadership transition and will brief him personally tomorrow. He's agreed to withhold judgment until then. Good. I stood, gathering my tablet. Let's deal with Jason now before this gets any more public. As we walked to the Elmwood room, employees quickly averted their eyes, pretending not to watch the unfolding drama. Their curiosity was understandable. In a single morning, the company's power structure had been completely upended. Jason was pacing the conference room when we entered, his tie loosened, hair disheveled. 2 security guards stood impassively by the door. When he saw me, his expression contorted with rage. There she is, he snarled. The woman who orchestrated this entire coup. That's enough, Jason, Ed said sharply. Your behavior is inappropriate and unprofessional. Unprofessional? He laughed bitterly. She's my ex-wife. This entire situation is inappropriate. The board, Diana interrupted, made its decision based on Ms. Morgan's qualifications and her evidence of your professional misconduct. Your personal history is irrelevant to that decision. Jason turned to me, his voice dropping dangerously. You planned this from the beginning, didn't you? Our entire marriage? Was it just to get close to Horizon? The absurdity of his accusation might have been comical if it weren't so offensive. We'd met in college, years before either of us had any connection to Horizon Digital. I think you're confused about the timeline, Jason, I replied calmly. When we married, you were a junior copywriter at Weber and Associates. Horizon wasn't in either of our futures then. Why? His voice cracked slightly, genuine confusion breaking through his anger. Why this company? Why now? I considered, my answer carefully, aware of Ed and Diana watching this exchange. Because Horizon is where the evidence led me. The client misrepresentations, the stolen creative concepts, the toxic management culture, all of it pointed here. That you happened to be at the center of it was coincidental. A partial truth. While my investigation had indeed been based on evidence of professional misconduct, I'd started looking at Horizon specifically because of Jason. 3 months after our divorce, while still rebuilding my life, I'd noticed discrepancies in Horizon's public case studies, patterns similar to ethical breaches I'd studied during my MBA program. Curiosity had become suspicion, and suspicion had evolved into the most thorough investigation of my career. You have 2 options, Jason, I continued. You can accept a position as senior marketing strategist with appropriate oversight, or you can resign effective immediately. Either way, you will cooperate fully with the client audit and ethical review. And if I refuse, he challenged, stepping closer, then the board will terminate you for cause, and the evidence of professional misconduct will be included in your employment record. Additionally, the full file will be turned over to the American Marketing Association's Ethics Committee for review. The color drained from his face as the implications sank in. You're threatening me with professional excommunication? I'm offering you a choice, I corrected. More than you gave me when you ended our marriage via public announcement. At my birthday dinner. Ed shifted uncomfortably, and I realized I'd allowed personal history to seep into a professional conversation. I quickly redirected. The choice is yours, Jason, but it needs to be made now. The company announcement has gone out. The transition is happening with or without your cooperation. He stared at me for a long moment, calculation replacing rage, in his eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice had regained its usual controlled timbre. I'll take the senior strategist position, temporarily, while I consider my options. I nodded, unsurprised. Jason had always been pragmatic when cornered. Wise choice. Kyle will brief you on your new responsibilities and limitations. For now, I suggest you go to your new office and gather yourself before the all-hands meeting at 3 p.m. As security escorted him out, I noticed the subtle change in his demeanor, the way his shoulders straightened, his expression smoothed into unreadable calm. The initial shock had worn off. The calculating Jason I knew so well was re-emerging, already plotting his next move. He's going to be a problem, Ed murmured beside me. Yes, I agreed, but a managed problem is better than an unpredictable one. What I didn't share with Ed was the dossier still in my portfolio, the evidence I hadn't yet presented to the board. The offshore consulting fees, the intellectual property theft from smaller agencies, the connections to questionable marketing tactics that went far beyond mere professional impropriety. Jason wasn't just a manipulative executive. He was the linchpin in a network of deception that extended beyond Horizon's walls, and I had only begun to unravel the full extent of his operation. As we walked back toward the executive floor, Diana cleared her throat uncomfortably. Rebecca, may I speak frankly? I nodded, curious about what the head of legal wanted to say. The personal history between you and Jason, it complicates things from a legal standpoint. If he decides to claim this is a personal vendetta rather than corporate governance, he can claim whatever he wants, I interrupted smoothly. The evidence speaks for itself. 5 independent auditors have verified my findings. The board has unanimously approved my appointment. His accusations would be dismissed as the desperate attempts of a disgraced executive to deflect attention from his own misconduct. Diana didn't seem entirely convinced. Still, perception matters, especially with clients and industry partners. Which is why, I added, I've compiled a comprehensive dossier on my own involvement, full disclosure of our past relationship, documentation of my investigation process, and independent verification of every finding. It's all there, Diana. Transparency works both ways. This seemed to satisfy her, at least temporarily. As we reached my office, I paused, turning to both board members. Horizon Digital is about to enter the most challenging period in its history, I said quietly. What happens in the next 72 hours will determine whether we emerge stronger or collapse under the weight of Jason's deceptions. I need to know you're both prepared for what's coming. Ed's expression hardened with determination. We knew what we were getting into when we reviewed your evidence, Rebecca. The board stands behind you. I hoped that resolve would hold when the full scope of Jason's activities came to light, because the client deception I'd presented was merely the tip of a much darker iceberg. One that, when exposed, would send shockwaves far beyond horizons. Walls. The afternoon unfolded in a blur of meetings, each one revealing new layers to Jason's web of deception. At 2 p.m., I met with Melissa Chen from Creative and the forensic accountants in a secure conference room we designated as our investigation hub. We've begun deep analysis of the server backups, Melissa reported, her fingers flying across her keyboard as she projected data onto the wall screen. Jason thought he was covering his tracks by deleting files from the main system, but he didn't. Realize we maintain encrypted backups on a separate server that even executives can't access. The lead forensic accountant, a stern woman named Victoria Blackwood, nodded appreciatively. Smart protocols. We've already identified at least 23 instances where original client reports were altered before presentation. The discrepancies are subtle but significant. Reach numbers reclassified, engagement metrics artificially inflated, competitor analyses manipulated to make Horizon's work appear more effective. Show me, I requested, moving closer to the screen. Victoria pulled up side-by-side comparisons of campaign reports, original versions versus the doctored files that had been officially submitted to clients. The changes were clever but unmistakable. Instagram engagement inflated by 34%, conversion rates adjusted upward, competitive positioning enhanced through selective data presentation. He was good, Victoria admitted grudgingly. Most of these manipulations would go unnoticed in standard reviews. It's only when you look at the pattern across multiple clients that the deception becomes apparent. Kyle entered the room carrying a thick folder. Ms. Morgan, I found these in Mr. Reynolds' private files, the ones he kept in his credenza rather than the company's document management system. I accepted the folder with gloved hands, mindful of maintaining the chain of evidence. Inside were handwritten notes detailing meetings not recorded on Jason's official calendar, many with an individual identified only as MK. The same initials from the email exchanges I'd uncovered earlier. Melissa, can you cross-reference these dates with Jason's email communications with this MK contact and check his building access logs for these days? See if any unregistered visitors came through security. As Melissa nodded and began typing, I continued reviewing the documents. One page caught my attention, a handwritten calculation of fee structures between Horizon Digital, several client companies, and a third entity labeled Meridian Consulting. The numbers were staggering. Over $2. $3 million moved through this triangular structure in the past year alone. Victoria, what do we know about Meridian Consulting? The forensic accountant frowned. Nothing yet. It's not mentioned in any of the official company documents we've reviewed. A knock at the door interrupted us. Diana entered, her expression grave. "Rebecca, we may have a situation developing. Jason's been making calls from his personal cell phone since being escorted to his new office. We can't monitor the content, but the patterns are concerning." "Who has he called?" I asked immediately, alert to the potential threat. Several numbers were still identifying, but two stand out: Martin Lawrence at Prisma Innovations and someone at the private number for the Boston Business Journal's investigative team. I processed this information quickly. He was trying to control the narrative, either by pressuring our largest client or by leaking a story that framed this transition as a personal vendetta. "Exactly," Diana confirmed. "And there's more. Security? Reports he's scheduled a visitor for 4:30 p.m. today, a lawyer from Winters & Jacobson. They specialize in executive disputes and wrongful termination cases." The pieces clicked into place. Jason was positioning himself as a victim, a dedicated executive being unfairly targeted by his vindictive ex-wife. It was clever. I had to acknowledge that. If he succeeded in controlling the narrative, he could undermine my credibility before the full extent of his deception became public. "We need to accelerate our timeline," I decided. "Diana, is the press release ready for the client disclosure?" "Almost. Legal is finalizing the language to ensure we're fully compliant while minimizing relationship damage." "Send me the draft immediately. I want it issued before close of business today." I turned to Victoria. "How quickly can your team compile a preliminary report on the client discrepancies?" "We can have a top-line summary in 3 hours. It won't be comprehensive, but it will establish the pattern of intentional misrepresentation." "That's sufficient for now." I faced Melissa next. "I need access to Jason's email exchanges with this MK contact as soon as possible, and full visitor logs for the past year cross-referenced with his private calendar." As the team dispersed to their tasks, I found myself alone in the conference room, surrounded by evidence of Jason's betrayal, not just of me, but of the entire company and its clients. The familiar ache of personal hurt had long since transformed into something colder and more focused, determination to expose the truth, whatever the cost. My phone buzzed with a message from Ed. "Jason requesting private meeting with you. Says, it's in everyone's best interest. Thoughts?" I considered the request. Meeting alone with Jason would be risky, but it might also reveal what he was planning. After a moment's reflection, I responded, "Conference room C. Security outside the door. 15 minutes only." At precisely 3:45 p.m., I entered the small conference room to find Jason already seated, his composure fully restored. The disheveled, angry man from our earlier confrontation had vanished, replaced by the calculated, charming executive I'd been married to for 8 years. "Rebecca." He greeted me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you for meeting with me." 15 minutes, Jason. I'm on a tight schedule." He leaned back, studying me with newfound respect. "You know, in all our years together, I never truly appreciated your capabilities. That was my mistake, one of many." "I'm not here for reminiscence," I replied evenly. "What did you want to discuss?" "A mutually beneficial arrangement." He slid a folder across the table. "My resignation, effective immediately, in exchange for certain accommodations." I opened the folder to find a drafted resignation letter and a proposed separation agreement. The terms were breathtaking in their audacity: full severance, retention of stock options, indemnification against any professional improprieties discovered during his tenure, and a mutual non-disparagement clause that would effectively prevent the company from disclosing the reasons for his departure. "This is delusional, Jason." "Is it?" His smile widened slightly. "Consider the alternatives. A prolonged public battle between ex-spouses at the helm of a major marketing agency. Accusations of personal vendetta undermining legitimate corporate governance. Client defections, industry gossip, talent exodus." He shrugged. Horizon's reputation would plummet, possibly beyond recovery. You seem to be forgetting the evidence, I reminded him. 5 independent auditors have verified the client deception. This goes beyond any personal history between us. Evidence can be interpreted many ways. His tone remained conversational, almost friendly. Did you know Martin Lawrence and I have been friends since business school? That we vacation together in the Hamptons every summer? How do you think Prisma will respond when their CEO hears that his old friend is being railroaded by his bitter ex-wife? I maintained my poker face, though internally I was recalculating. Martin Lawrence controlled nearly a quarter of our business. If he pulled Prisma's contracts... And the press, Jason continued, noting my silence. They love a scandalous narrative. Scorned wife takes revenge on corporate husband. It practically writes itself. You're overplaying your hand, Jason. I closed the folder and slid it back to him. Your proposal is rejected. His expression hardened. Then you leave me no choice but to protect myself by any means necessary. Is that a threat? A statement of fact. He stood slowly. I've spent 12 years building Horizon Digital. I won't watch you destroy it over a personal grudge. This isn't about our divorce, Jason. I rose to meet his gaze directly. This is about $2. $3 million in consulting fees to a shell company. This is about systematically manipulated client data that put accounts at risk. This is about intellectual property theft that jeopardized dozens of careers and millions in agency revenue. A flicker of surprise crossed his face at the mention of the specific figure. He hadn't expected me to know the full extent of the Meridian consulting operation. You're out of your depth, Rebecca, he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You have no idea what you're interfering with or who else is involved. Some things are bigger than agency politics, or even your quest for personal justice. The implied threat hung in the air between us. For the first time, I sensed real fear beneath Jason's calculated exterior, not fear of exposure or professional disgrace, but something deeper and more primal. Our 15 minutes are up, I said calmly, moving toward the door. Security will escort you back to your office. The all-hands meeting is still scheduled for 4:30 p.m. I expect you to attend and support the transition publicly. As I reached for the door handle, Jason called after me. Rebecca. Something in his tone made me pause. We were married for 8 years. I know you think I never loved you, but you're wrong. What I did, the announcement, the way I ended things, it wasn't about you. I was trying to protect you. I turned back, searching his face for any sign of manipulation or deception. Instead, I found an uncharacteristic vulnerability, almost pleading. Protect me from what, Jason? He seemed to wage an internal battle before responding. From the consequences of knowing too much, some questions shouldn't be asked. Some stones shouldn't be turned. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of genuine distress I'd rarely seen from him. Walk away from this investigation, Rebecca. Take the CEO position. Implement your corporate reforms. But close the inquiry into Meridian Consulting, for your own safety. The sincerity in his warning sent a chill through me. This wasn't the calculated threat of a cornered executive. This was genuine fear for my well-being. Who is MK? Jason? The color drained from his face. How do you... He caught himself. It doesn't matter. Just know that these people operate on a different level. They don't issue warnings or make threats. They simply solve problems. Are you saying your client deception is connected to something criminal? Possibly violent? He moved closer, lowering his voice despite the privacy of the room. I'm saying you need to be very careful about what you reveal at today's all-hands meeting. Stick to the leadership transition. Leave Meridian alone, if not for your sake, then for the safety of everyone in this building. With that cryptic warning, He straightened his tie and walked past me out of the conference room, nodding politely to the security officers stationed outside. I remained rooted, in place, my mind racing to process this new information. Jason's warning seemed genuine, which opened a disturbing possibility. The client deception I'd uncovered might be merely a symptom of something far more dangerous, something that had prompted Jason to abruptly sever all ties with me 2 years ago, even at the cost of public humiliation. As I made my way back to the executive floor, I found Melissa waiting outside my office, her expression troubled. "I found something about MK," she said without preamble. "You need to see this immediately." The familiar tightness of anxiety gripped my chest as I followed her inside, shutting the door firmly behind us. Whatever Jason was involved in, I was about to discover just how deep the deception ran, and perhaps why my husband of 8 years had suddenly decided I was a liability he couldn't afford to keep. "MK is Marcus Kingston," Melissa explained as she closed my office door behind us. She placed her laptop on my desk and pulled up a series of documents. "He's officially listed as a strategy consultant to several agencies, including Horizon, but there's almost no public footprint beyond that." I studied the screen, trying to place the name. Should I know him? Probably not. He operates almost entirely in the shadows. Melissa's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up more files. What's concerning is his client list and the pattern of what happens to agencies after he gets involved. She displayed a chart showing the trajectories of various marketing firms. Each of these companies hired Kingston as a consultant. Within 12 to 18 months, each experienced a major restructuring event: acquisition, merger, or bankruptcy. In every case, the original executive leadership was completely replaced. "Corporate raider?" I suggested. "That was my first thought, but it's more complex." She pulled up another screen, this one showing news headlines. "These are ethical scandals connected to agencies in Kingston's portfolio: plagiarism accusations, client data misuse, toxic workplace exposés." I leaned closer, noting the dates. These all occurred during or immediately after his consultation periods. Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting. She opened a new folder containing surveillance photos. These were taken at various industry events over the past 3 years. I've highlighted Kingston in each one. The images showed a tall, distinguished-looking man with silver hair and penetrating eyes. In every photo, he was engaged in conversation with various executives, including, I felt my breath catch, Jason. They appeared to be on familiar terms, sharing drinks at an industry award gala in one image, leaning close in conversation at a marketing conference in another. "When was the earliest contact between them?" I asked. Melissa scrolled to a photo dated 2 years and 3 months ago. "This is the first documented meeting I could find. Note the date." I did, and felt a chill run through me. 3 weeks before Jason had ended our marriage with that public announcement at my birthday dinner. "There's more," Melissa continued. I cross-referenced the dates of Kingston's meetings with Jason against our internal records. Each meeting was followed by a significant decision regarding Horizon's client practices, more aggressive performance, metrics, changes in reporting methodologies, shifts in creative attribution protocols. The implications were becoming clear and far more disturbing than mere client deception. "He's not just a corporate raider," I murmured. "He's something worse." Melissa nodded grimly. "I think so." I dug into the aftermath of agencies connected to Kingston. There are patterns of creative professionals unable to find work after raising ethical concerns, whistleblowers discredited through carefully orchestrated social media campaigns, career-ending, accusations of plagiarism. I sat heavily in my chair, processing this information. Jason's warning suddenly took on new meaning, not about his noble intentions or Kingston's shadowy conspiracy, but about broader culpability within Horizon's leadership. "Have you shared this with anyone else?" I asked Melissa. "No," Given the sensitivity, I thought you should see it first. Good instinct. Keep this between us for now. I checked the time. 4:15 p.m. The all-hands meeting would begin in 15 minutes. Continue your investigation, but use a secure terminal not connected to our main network. And Melissa. Be careful. Document everything, but store it offline. After she left, I sat alone in my office, staring at the Boston skyline as I recalibrated my understanding of what I'd stumbled into. This wasn't just about exposing Jason's client deception or even reclaiming my professional dignity. I was potentially uncovering a predatory operation that endangered careers and involved people who, in Jason's words, solved problems. My phone buzzed with a reminder for the all-hands meeting. I gathered my notes, my mind racing with new questions. How much should I reveal to the company today? How could I protect the investigation and my team while still moving forward? As I headed toward the main presentation hall where hundreds of employees were gathering, Ed fell into step beside me. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he observed quietly. "Something like that." I hesitated, then decided he needed to know at least part of the truth. "The situation is more complex than we initially believed. Jason may be involved with dangerous people." Ed's expression tightened. "Dangerous how?" "I'm still piecing it together, but I think our focus needs to shift. The client deception appears to be covering up something bigger, possibly systematic corporate sabotage across multiple agencies." He absorbed this in silence as we approached the presentation hall doors. "Should we postpone the meeting?" "No, but I'm modifying my remarks. We announced the leadership transition and briefly addressed the client review, but I won't mention Meridian Consulting or Marcus Kingston." Ed nodded, understanding the gravity of my decision. "I'll support whatever you think is best." The presentation hall fell silent as we entered, hundreds of employees watching with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Jason was already seated, in the front row, his expression unreadable. I noticed he had positioned himself next to Martin Lawrence from Prisma Innovations, a power play designed to demonstrate his continued relevance and connections. As I took the stage, I felt the weight of every gaze. These people depended on Horizon for their livelihoods. They had mortgages, children in college, careers they'd built. What I said in the next few minutes would affect them all. "Good afternoon," I began, my voice calm and measured despite the turmoil inside. "For those who haven't seen the announcement, my name is Rebecca Morgan, and as of this morning, I am the new Chief Executive Officer of Horizon Digital Solutions." A murmur ran through the crowd, a mixture of surprise, confusion, and speculation. I waited for it to subside before continuing. "This transition comes at a critical moment for our agency. The board has identified significant challenges in our client reporting and creative attribution practices that require immediate attention. A full audit is underway, and we are committed to complete transparency with our clients and partners." I caught Jason's eye, noting the slight relaxation in his posture as I avoided mentioning Meridian Consulting. He thought I was heeding his warning. "In the coming weeks, you'll see changes designed to strengthen our ethical foundation and ensure our continued success. Some of these changes may be disruptive in the short term, but they are essential for our long-term stability and growth." I addressed the elephant in the room directly. "You may have heard rumors about the nature of this transition. Let me be clear, this is not about personalities or past relationships. It is about professional responsibility and ethical leadership." The presentation hall remained silent, employees hanging on every word. "Jason Reynolds will be transitioning to the role of senior marketing strategist, where his institutional knowledge will remain valuable to the agency. We appreciate his years of service and look forward to his continued contributions in this new capacity." Jason rose on cue, joining me on stage with a practiced smile that appeared genuine to everyone who didn't know him as well as I did. He shook my hand firmly, playing his part in this carefully choreographed display of corporate unity. "Thank you, Rebecca," he said, addressing the audience. "Change is always challenging, but often necessary. I fully support this transition and look forward to working with Ms. Morgan to ensure Horizon's continued success." His performance was flawless, the consummate professional accepting a new corporate reality with grace. Only I could see the calculated warning in his eyes as he added, "Horizon Digital has always put the welfare of our clients, employees, and creative integrity first. That commitment remains unchanged under this new leadership." The implied message was clear. Don't expose what we've been doing or everyone suffers. As Jason returned to his seat, I concluded the formal portion of the meeting and opened the floor for questions. They came rapidly, reflecting the uncertainty rippling through the company. Will there be layoffs? Is the agency in trouble with clients? Will this affect our current campaigns? Are we being investigated by industry authorities? I answered each question with as much honesty as I could without revealing the true scope of what we'd discovered, all while maintaining eye contact with Jason, letting him believe I was complying with his warning while plotting my next move. As the meeting concluded and employees filed out, Martin Lawrence approached me, Jason hovering nearby. "Impressive first day," Lawrence remarked, his shrewd eyes assessing me carefully. "Jason speaks highly of your capabilities, though he seems surprised by your appointment." "Change often comes with surprises," I replied diplomatically. "Indeed." Lawrence glanced between Jason and me, clearly sensing the undercurrents. "I look forward to our meeting tomorrow to discuss Prisma's ongoing relationship with Horizon. I assume our special arrangements will continue uninterrupted?" The emphasis on special arrangements sent a warning signal through my mind. Was Prisma involved in the deception we'd uncovered? "We'll discuss all aspects of our partnership tomorrow," I assured him, maintaining a professional smile. "Horizon values transparency in all our client relationships." Something flickered in Lawrence's eyes. Concern, perhaps, or calculation. "Transparency. Yes, a modern virtue, though not always conducive to business efficiency." He nodded politely. "Until tomorrow, then." As he walked away, Jason lingered for a moment. "Smart decision in there," he said quietly. "Keeping things vague protects everyone." "I'm still investigating Meridian Consulting," I informed him, keeping my voice low. "I'm just being methodical about it." A flash of genuine fear crossed his face. "Rebecca, please. You don't understand what you're dealing with." "Then help me understand, Jason. Who is Marcus Kingston really, and what are you involved in?" His face paled at the mention of Kingston's name. "How did you—" He stopped, composing himself. "Not here. Not now." "My office, 8 p.m., I instructed. "After most employees have left. One chance to explain yourself, Jason." He hesitated, then nodded almost imperceptibly before walking away, his shoulders tense with what appeared to be genuine dread. As the presentation hall emptied, I remained on stage, watching the retreating figures. The day had revealed layers of deception far beyond what I'd initially suspected. Whatever Jason was involved in, it extended beyond Horizon Digital, beyond our broken marriage, beyond simple client deception, and if my suspicions were correct, Marcus Kingston wasn't just a corporate consultant, but something far more sinister. I checked my watch. 5:30 p.m. 2.5 hours until Jason's explanation. Time to prepare for a conversation that might finally reveal the truth behind both our failed marriage and the dark secret at the heart of Horizon Digital. The hours after the all-hands meeting were filled with methodical preparation. After briefing Ed on what I'd discovered about Meridian Consulting, I retreated to my office with strict instructions not to be disturbed except for emergencies. I called Victoria, the lead forensic accountant. "I need everything you have on Horizon's client reporting practices for the past 2 years." Focus on any changes in methodology, shifts in creative attribution, or unusual payment structures that might connect to outside consultants. That's outside our original scope, she replied hesitantly. I know. The investigation has evolved. I need this information as soon as possible. After ending the call, I contacted an old colleague from my MBA program, Sofia Ramirez, now a private investigator specializing in corporate malfeasance. Sophia, I need a background check on someone named Marcus Kingston. Deep dive, off the books, highest discretion. Sounds serious, she remarked. Timeline. Yesterday if possible. But I'll take whatever you can get me by this evening. The client deception evidence against Jason was damning, but I sensed a deeper layer to his corruption, one that went beyond mere profit and into something potentially catastrophic. The more I uncovered about Meridian Consulting, the more disturbed I became. At 7 p.m., Melissa knocked softly at my door. I've got something. She placed a tablet on my desk displaying corporate registration documents. Meridian Consulting was established 3 years ago, registered in Delaware. The beneficial owners are hidden behind a series of shell companies, but I tracked payments from Horizon to Meridian, then from Meridian to several industry journalists and influencers. Bribes? I asked, scanning the payment schedule. More like strategic influence. Look at the publication dates. She pulled up a timeline showing articles praising Horizon's work juxtaposed with damaging exposés about competing agencies. Each negative piece about a competitor corresponds with a payment from Meridian to the writer, and each payment from Horizon to Meridian. They were systematically undermining competition through manufactured scandals, I murmured, the pieces falling into place. Exactly. But here's where it gets darker, Melissa continued, her voice dropping. I found communications between Kingston and Jason discussing a containment strategy for what they called internal ethical concerns. The timing matches perfectly with the departures of 3 creative directors who later found themselves blacklisted in the industry. Whistleblowers, I realized. They were silencing potential whistleblowers. And here's the kicker. Melissa pulled up another document. 2 weeks before Jason ended your marriage, Kingston emailed him about proximity liability and ensuring complete compartmentalization to protect core operations. The very next day, Jason booked the reservation at Harborview Restaurant. The implication hit me like a physical blow. My marriage hadn't ended because Jason had fallen for Vanessa. It had ended because Marcus Kingston had deemed me a liability, someone too close to Jason's activities who might eventually discover what was happening at Horizon. My phone buzzed with a text from security. Mr. Reynolds has arrived for your 8 p.m. meeting, waiting in lobby. I stared at the message, considering my options. Was I walking into a trap by meeting Jason alone, or was this my best chance to understand the full scope of what I was facing? Have security bring him up. I instructed Kyle via intercom. And Melissa, I want you monitoring the office cameras from the adjacent room. If anything seems off, call Ed immediately. As Melissa left to take position, my phone rang. Sophia returning my call about Kingston. Rebecca, I've got preliminary information on your target. It's concerning. Go ahead, I said, putting her on speaker as I prepared my office for Jason's arrival. Marcus Kingston, age 56, former military intelligence, specialized in psychological operations before transitioning to corporate work. He operates a network of consulting firms that all trace back to a parent company called Vertex Strategic. Their client list includes a dozen major agencies that have all experienced leadership overhauls in the past 5 years. Criminal record? None, which is the strange part given what happens around him. There's a pattern of accidents and scandals surrounding people who raise concerns about his clients. Nothing directly tied to him, but the statistical correlation is troubling. Such as? A creative director at Weber and Brown suffered a hit-and-run accident the day before presenting evidence of ethical breaches to their board. A financial officer at Crowley Partners had her reputation destroyed by fabricated plagiarism accusations when she questioned accounting practices. A journalist investigating client reporting discrepancies at Taylor Media found himself facing sudden drug charges that were later dismissed, but not before his career was ruined. The pattern was chillingly familiar, especially the plagiarism accusations. A familiar tactic, apparently. One more thing, Sophia added. Kingston's organization maintains close relationships with 3 major clients that repeatedly appear across their agency portfolio: Prisma Innovations, NextCore Technologies, and Black Harbor Financial. Prisma, Martin Lawrence's company. The connection was now explicit. "Send me everything you have," I said. "And, Sophia, be careful with this information." As I ended the call, Kyle's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Reynolds is on his way up, Ms. Morgan." I closed all sensitive files on my computer and composed myself. Whatever game Jason was playing, whether his warnings contained any truth or were purely self-serving, I would be prepared. Jason entered my office looking distinctly different from the confident executive of this morning, or even the desperate man from the afternoon confrontation. He was subdued, his movements careful, his eyes constantly scanning the room. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, remaining standing even when I gestured toward a chair. "Your 15 minutes starts now." "Jason, explain Meridian Consulting and your relationship with Marcus Kingston." If he was surprised by my direct approach, he didn't show it. Instead, he pulled out his phone, pressed several buttons, then placed it on my desk. "Signal jammer," he explained. "Kingston's people are sophisticated. We need to be careful." The paranoid gesture might have seemed theatrical if it weren't for the genuine tension evident in every line of his body. "Meridian was originally legitimate," he began, finally taking a seat. "Kingston approached Horizon 3 years ago offering specialized services in competitive intelligence and strategic positioning. His credentials were impeccable, his client list impressive. The board approved the consulting arrangement. And when did it cross into unethical territory? Gradually. At first, it was just aggressive client reporting, emphasizing wins, contextualizing losses. Standard agency spin. Then came suggestions about strategic information placement with industry publications. It seemed like sophisticated PR until I realized the information was being manipulated. "You realized, or you orchestrated?" I challenged. "Both," he admitted, surprising me with his candor. "I was complicit, Rebecca. I won't deny that. But when I questioned certain tactics, Kingston made it clear that Horizon was now locked into a partnership with consequences for withdrawal." "What kind of consequences?" "The kind that would destroy the agency and everyone in it. He had documentation of everything, carefully crafted to implicate Horizon leadership while insulating himself and his organization. And he had Prisma." "Martin Lawrence," I said, the connection cementing. "Martin and Kingston have been partners for years. They target agencies with strategic value, infiltrate with consulting services, compromise their ethics, then effectively control their operations while maintaining plausible deniability. 12 agencies in the past 5 years. "And our marriage?" I asked, the question that had been burning in me since seeing Melissa's timeline. Was ending it really about Vanessa? Or was it about Kingston? Jason's eyes met mine directly, for the first time since entering the office. "Both, but not in the way you think. I was genuinely involved with Vanessa. That wasn't fabricated. But the timing and method, that was Kingston. He identified you as a potential risk." "A risk? I was completely uninvolved in Horizon." "That's exactly what made you dangerous. You weren't compromised. You had access to me, to my thoughts, to my occasional doubts. Kingston operates by ensuring everyone is complicit. You were an unknown variable. So he ordered you to end our marriage? The coldness of it was almost incomprehensible. He strongly suggested creating distance between us, particularly as the Prisma relationship deepened. The public breakup, at your birthday, that specific cruelty, was my own weakness. I thought a clean, dramatic break would be easier. Easier for whom, Jason? The old pain surfaced briefly before I pushed it aside. Never mind. That's not what matters. Now, what matters is that Kingston and Lawrence are still operating, and now I'm CEO of an agency they consider their territory. Jason leaned forward, his voice dropping. Which is why you're in immediate danger. They won't allow you to disrupt their operation. The client audit, the ethical review, these threaten everything they've built. Why are you telling me this now? Why warn me after everything you've done? He hesitated, seeming to struggle with his answer. Because despite everything, I never wanted you physically harmed. And because I'm trapped. Everyone at the executive level is compromised in some way. Financial incentives, career threats, actual blackmail in some cases. You're the only person with the authority and the independence to end this. I studied him carefully, looking for the manipulation beneath the apparent sincerity. This could easily be another ploy, casting himself as the reluctant participant rather than the driving, or positioning us as allies against a common enemy. Even if I believe you, what exactly do you expect me to do? If Kingston is as dangerous as you claim, with connections to Prisma and other agencies, going public would be suicide. Not going public, Jason reached into his jacket and removed a small drive. This contains encrypted files documenting Kingston's entire operation, the payment structures, the compromised journalists, the fabricated scandals, everything. I've been collecting it for months as insurance. I made no move to take it. Why haven't you used it yourself? Because Kingston has equal evidence against me, mutually assured destruction. But you have credibility he can't easily destroy, authority he doesn't control, and most importantly, no history he can leverage against you. Except our marriage and this supposed vendetta. Which is why you need to move quickly before he can establish that narrative. I finally took the drive, though I had no intention of trusting its contents without independent verification. Even if everything you've said is true, Jason, it doesn't erase what you did. To me, to this agency, to the people whose careers were destroyed. I know, he said simply. I'm not asking for forgiveness or redemption. Just use the information to stop Kingston before he does to someone else what he did to us. As he stood to leave, a final question occurred to me. Vanessa, does she know about all this? A complicated expression crossed his face. She knows enough to be useful to Kingston, not enough to be a threat. Our relationship is real, but it's also monitored. The implication was both sad and chilling. Jason had traded one prison for another, from a marriage he betrayed to a relationship he couldn't escape. As security escorted him from the building, I sat alone with the drive in my hand, weighing my options. If Jason was telling the truth, I had stumbled into something far more dangerous than client deception or personal betrayal. If he was lying, this drive could contain malware designed to compromise Horizon further or frame me for additional misconduct. I called Melissa into my office. I need this analyzed on an air-gapped system. I handed her the drive. No connection to our network, maximum security protocols. And I want increased security for all executive team members, particularly you and Kyle. You believe him? She asked, surprised. I believe the threat is real, whether or not Jason's version of events is complete. Kingston's connection to Prisma and the pattern of agency takeovers is documented. We proceed assuming hostile intent. After she left, I contacted Ed, briefing him on the new developments without mentioning the drive. Trust had to be carefully managed until I knew exactly who within Horizon was compromised. As night fell over Boston, I found myself standing at the office windows, looking out at the city lights while formulating a strategy. The revenge I had meticulously planned had evolved into something far more significant than personal vindication. Whatever Kingston's operation involved, it had left a trail of damaged agencies and ruined careers in its wake. Stopping it would require more than exposing Jason. It would mean dismantling an entire network of corporate manipulation. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Smart meeting with Jason. Exploring options shows flexibility. Perhaps we should discuss Horizon's future direction. MK. The message confirmed two things. Kingston was watching, and my office was indeed monitored. The game was escalating more quickly than I had anticipated. I didn't respond to the text. Instead, I called Kyle. Cancel my meeting with Martin Lawrence tomorrow. Cite an emergency board session. And Kyle, use your personal phone for any sensitive communications going forward. I believe our systems may be compromised. The next morning dawned clear and cold, matching my resolve. I arrived at Horizon headquarters at 6 a.m., long before most employees, and met Melissa in the secure room we had established for our investigation. The drive checks out, she reported. No malware or trackers. The content is exactly what Jason described. Comprehensive documentation of Kingston's operation across multiple agencies. The level of detail is disturbing. Show me. For the next hour, we reviewed the evidence Jason had compiled. It painted a damning picture. Kingston's organization systematically infiltrated agencies, compromised their reporting practices, leveraged their client relationships for blackmail and control, and eliminated anyone who raised concerns. The operation extended beyond marketing into financial services, providing Prisma and other clients with market manipulation capabilities through controlled narrative management. This isn't just unethical, I said finally. It's potentially criminal. Market manipulation, blackmail, possibly even responsibility for physical attacks on whistleblowers. What's our next move? Melissa asked. I considered our options carefully. Going to the authorities directly would be dangerous. Kingston clearly had connections and influence. Taking the information public risked exposure before we had adequate protection. The board couldn't be fully trusted until we determined who was compromised. We need leverage and protection simultaneously, I decided. First, secure offline backups of all this evidence in multiple locations. Second, prepare a complete briefing for the 3 board members we're confident aren't compromised. Third, contact these former executives from other agencies who were forced out. They may provide additional corroboration and safety in numbers. And Kingston? He's already reaching out to you. Let him think I'm considering cooperation. We need time to build our case and our protection. The next 72 hours unfolded in a careful dance of preparation and misdirection. While maintaining normal operations at Horizon, we quietly built a coalition of former Kingston victims, documented the full extent of the corruption, and prepared both legal and public responses. I met with key clients, excluding Prisma, to establish direct relationships independent of the compromised systems Kingston had established. On the morning of my 4th day as CEO, Ed convened an emergency board meeting with only the 5 members we had verified as untainted. I presented the complete evidence of Kingston's operation, including his connection to Prisma and other clients. This leaves us with 3 options, I concluded. 1. We cooperate with Kingston and become willing participants in his scheme. 2. We attempt to extricate ourselves quietly, which history suggests will result in manufactured scandals and possibly worse. Or 3. We move decisively to expose the entire operation with the protection of numbers and public attention. The board's decision was unanimous. By noon, I had implemented the first phase of our counteroffensive. Simultaneous statements. From executives at 4 different agencies detailing Kingston's methods, coordinated legal filings in 3 states, and a comprehensive data package delivered to federal investigators and select journalists known for their integrity. Kingston's response came within the hour, a call directly to my office phone. "Ms. Morgan," his voice was remarkably calm. "I'm disappointed by your choice of direction. Jason assured me you were pragmatic." "I am pragmatic, Mr. Kingston. I simply calculate long-term costs differently than you do. You've made a serious error in judgment. The consequences will extend far beyond your career." That sounds remarkably like a threat. "Merely an observation. What you've started cannot be easily contained. Many will be damaged, including those you claim to protect." "Perhaps. But your operation ends today, regardless of the cost." After he hung up, I implemented the final phase of our plan. A company-wide address explaining the situation in measured terms, the immediate severance of all ties with Prisma Innovations, and the announcement of an industry coalition against corporate manipulation tactics. Jason attended the address, standing quietly at the back of the room. When I finished speaking, he approached the stage. "You've done what I couldn't," he said, simply. "Thank you." "I didn't do it for you," I replied. "I know." He handed me an envelope. "My resignation, effective immediately. No conditions, no requests. You were right from the beginning. Horizon needs a clean break from the past." I accepted the envelope, feeling neither triumph nor resentment, just a clear-eyed recognition that some chapter of my life was finally closing. "What will you do now?" I asked, more curious than concerned. "Cooperate with the investigators. Try to make amends where possible. Start over somewhere without the weight of all this." He glanced toward Vanessa, who stood by the door, uncertainty written across her face. "Some relationships may not survive the process, but that's the price of truth." As he walked away, I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, no pleasure in having orchestrated the collapse of his career. What I had once framed as personal revenge had transformed into something far more meaningful, dismantling a system of corruption that had damaged countless lives and careers beyond my own. The weeks that followed brought both challenges and vindication. Kingston disappeared before authorities could question him, but his organization crumbled as agencies and clients rushed to distance themselves from the scandal. Horizon weathered significant financial turbulence as we severed ties with compromised clients, but our transparency earned respect within the industry and attracted new business committed to ethical practices. 6 months later, I stood at the EC podium of the American Marketing Association's annual conference, delivering the keynote address on ethical leadership and corporate responsibility. The journey from that humiliating birthday dinner to this moment of professional recognition had been neither straight nor simple, but it had transformed me in ways I never anticipated. "True success isn't measured by what we achieve for ourselves," I told the audience of industry leaders. "It's measured by the systems we build, the values we uphold, and the people we empower along the way." As I concluded my speech to enthusiastic applause, I caught sight of a familiar face in the audience, Jason, looking somewhat older and more subdued, seated beside a woman I didn't recognize. He nodded slightly in acknowledgement, a gesture neither friendly nor hostile, simply respectful. I returned the nod before turning to accept congratulations from colleagues. The anger that had once fueled my determination had long since burned away, replaced by something more sustainable, a commitment to building something better than what had been broken. That evening, as I stood on the hotel balcony overlooking the city lights, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Former Prisma CEO Martin Lawrence indicted on market manipulation charges. Another domino falling in the aftermath of Kingston's exposed network. I closed the notification, set my phone aside, and took a moment to simply breathe. The revenge I had once plotted had evolved into something far more significant than personal vindication. In dismantling Kingston's operation, I hadn't just reclaimed my own dignity, but had helped restore integrity to an entire industry. Perhaps that was the ultimate lesson. That true healing comes not from making others pay for our pain, but from transforming that pain into purpose that extends beyond ourselves. The husband who had humiliated me at my birthday dinner had inadvertently set me on a path to discover strengths I never knew I possessed, to achieve impact beyond what either of us had imagined possible, and ultimately, to outgrow the very need to prove him wrong. I turned back toward the conference hall where colleagues waited, ready to continue building something that would last long after this chapter of my story had faded into memory. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories, right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.